Ever get that feeling like maybe we're not getting the full picture? Like we're stuck seeing, I don't know, shadows of the real deal?
I think I know where you're going with this.
Well, today we're taking a deep dive into Vedanta. And joining us on this journey is Tavamithram.
Ah, Tavamithram. Always thought-provoking. Sometimes a bit, well, let's just say he doesn't shy away from a good debate.
That's putting it mildly. In our source material, he argues that many of us, when it comes to spirituality, well, we're trapped in a cave of misunderstanding, clinging to shadows instead of embracing the light of true knowledge.
A bold claim. I'm intrigued.
So get ready to maybe challenge some of those closely held beliefs as we unpack Tavamithram's, let's say, unconventional take on Vedanta.
And for those new to Vedanta, it's not really about worshiping gods or anything like that.
Exactly. It's more about realizing the divine, the truly divine, within yourself.
Tavamithram gets right to the point, doesn't he? He really emphasizes that the heart of Vedanta, the core, is about recognizing the self, what we call the Atman, and understanding that the Atman is essentially one with Brahman.
Right, that whole aham brahmasmi idea, meaning I am Brahman. It's huge in Vedanta, for sure. But honestly, what does that actually mean for, you and me in our everyday lives? How do we actually experience that?
Now, there's the million-dollar question. Tavamithram, he uses this analogy of a stage. Think of actors, right? All playing their parts. Costumes, characters, the works.
Okay, I'm with you.
So the costumes, the characters, they change, obviously. But the actor underneath, that remains the same. Vedanta suggests it's the same with us. Beneath all these different identities we carry, there's a fundamental oneness. It's like a shared essence that connects every single one of us.
So if we're all part of this oneness, this interconnected web, what about individual souls then? The idea that we each have our own soul that's born, lives, and eventually well.
That's a big one, and Tavamithram goes right for it. Challenges it head on, really. He brings in these 5 Mahavakyas. They're these powerful statements. You find them in the Upanishads, these ancient Hindu scriptures.
Right, the Upanishads, essential Vedanta reading.
Absolutely. And one of these Mahavakyas, it just hits you. Tat Tvavansi, you are that. Just like that. No two ways about it. Our true nature, it's not separate from the ultimate reality.
He even uses the analogy of the seashore, right? All those waves, they seem so separate, but they're all part of the same ocean.
Exactly. And just like that ocean, our individual consciousness, it's all an expression of this one Paramatma. You could call it the cosmic self.
So Paramatma, that's like the ultimate all-encompassing self, and we're all just these little expressions of it, like waves on that ocean.
You got it. And that actually brings us to what Tavamithram says about 2 different kinds of knowledge, Apara Vidya and Para Vidya. Think of Apara Vidya like learning your ABCs.
Okay, basic building blocks.
Exactly, important, but just the very beginning.
Yeah.
Then you've got Para Vidya. This is about understanding what those letters mean when you put them together, the stories they tell, the wisdom they hold.
So Apara Vidya is like focusing on the individual waves, while Para Vidya is realizing, wow, there's this whole vast ocean out here.
You've got it. And Tavamithram, he's concerned that a lot of spiritual seekers, they get stuck in that Apara Vidya stage, focused on rituals, on dogma, chasing those external rewards. They never quite grasp the deeper truths of Para Vidya.
And that's where his critique of some spiritual organizations comes in, isn't it?
Yeah.
He seems particularly wary of manipulation, of this misuse of fear and blind faith.
Oh, absolutely. He does not hold back. He sees some spiritual leaders, and it's like they're taking advantage of people searching for security, for enlightenment, for something bigger than themselves. Tavamithram's point is, true spirituality, it shouldn't be about blind faith. It shouldn't be about giving your power away to someone else. It should be about empowering yourself to find your own truth.
It's a good point. It's a reminder to always be discerning, question things, even, or maybe especially, when it comes to matters of faith and spirituality. Don't just check your critical thinking at the door.
Couldn't agree more. And this is where self-inquiry comes in. Tavamithram, he's basically saying, don't just take my word for it. Question everything. Explore these ideas yourself and see where they lead.
So how can we apply that idea of self-inquiry to, our own lives? What does that actually look like in practice?
Well, it starts with awareness, really. Becoming aware of our own thoughts, our beliefs, the assumptions we carry around.
Like really taking inventory.
Yeah, exactly. Why do we believe the things we believe? Where did we even get these ideas in the first place? And the real kicker, are they actually serving us? Or are they part of what's keeping us stuck in that, that metaphorical cave?
Right, we're trying to break free of the shadows here.
Exactly. And that's where practices like meditation, they can be incredibly valuable.
Meditation, yeah. Not everyone's cup of tea, I guess. But
Sure, sure. But Tavamithram, he's not talking about meditation as some kind of mystical thing, reserved for monks on a mountaintop. For him, it's more like a tool, a way to cultivate awareness.
okay, so practical approach.
Exactly. Creating space between our thoughts, right? Just
Wow.
observing them. No judgment, no need to get all tangled up in them. Just connecting with that deeper sense of peace, that stillness within.
Sounds like a good way to quiet that mental chatter we all experience. Maybe tap into some of that Apara Vidya wisdom we were talking about earlier.
Precisely. And as we build that inner awareness, as things quiet down a bit, Tavamithram says we start to notice something. We see how often we get stuck in duality.
Duality. There's that word again.
It's a big one for him. That feeling of separation. Me over here, and then there's everything else. Separate from the divine, separate from each other, heck, sometimes even separate from our own experiences.
So this sense of separation of me versus everything else,
Yeah.
that leads to suffering.
That's the core of it, according to Tavamithram. We suffer because we believe on some level that we're separate. We cling to our desires, we're terrified of change, we try so hard to control everything and everyone around us, all because, at the deepest level, we've forgotten. We've forgotten our true nature,
Which is
that we're part of the one, part of that paramitma.
So we're back to the ocean analogy. We're not separate waves. We're all part of this vast interconnected ocean.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Tavamithram says that this clinging to duality, this sense of separation, it's often amplified by, get this, certain spiritual teachings.
Wait, really? You'd think spiritual teachings would be encouraging oneness, not separation.
You'd think so, right? But he's particularly concerned with teachings that really emphasize fear.
Fear. Like fear of what?
Fear of punishment. Fear of missing out on some kind of reward. Fear of not being good enough. It's like this constant pressure to, I don't know, earn our way to something better.
I'm starting to see where he's coming from. It's like a spiritual bait and switch, almost.
He doesn't mince words, does he? Tavamithram's urging us to really look at those teachings that keep us fixated on external authorities, on rituals, instead of encouraging us to discover the truth for ourselves.
So if true spirituality isn't about blind faith or needing someone else to validate our spiritual worth, then what is it about? How do we escape that cave of duality and step into that aham brahmasmi realization, that understanding that we're one with Brahman?
Tavamithram suggests it begins with self-love and compassion, a deep sense of compassion for ourselves and others.
Self-love. That can be a tricky one these days. It sometimes gets a bad rap.
For sure. But he's not talking about being self-centered or narcissistic, not at all. He's talking about recognizing the inherent worthiness within, seeing the divine spark in ourselves, and then extending that same compassion outward, recognizing that same spark in everyone else.
It reminds me of that line from the Upanishads, the self exists in all beings and all beings exist in the self.
There you go. And when we truly grasp that interconnectedness, when we really feel it, it naturally leads to more loving, more compassionate actions. We stop seeing ourselves as these isolated islands and start to recognize, there's something much bigger going on here. We're all in this together.
It's like that shift from Apara Vidya to Apara Vidya again, isn't it? We stop focusing on the individual letters and we see the whole story. We see how beautifully connected it all really is.
Exactly. And that change in perspective, that shift, it can be incredibly freeing. It doesn't erase the hard stuff, not at all, but it changes how we relate to it. We meet life's challenges with more wisdom, more heart, and ultimately, more peace.
So just to recap, if we want to escape that cave of ignorance Tavamithram talks about, it's about looking inward, questioning everything, becoming more self-aware, and then letting that awareness overflow into compassion for ourselves and everyone around us.
That's a great summary of Tavamithram's message. It's not about blindly accepting what we're told or looking for external validation. It's about a personal journey, a journey of self-discovery. It's about recognizing that divine spark within ourselves and honoring it in everyone we encounter.
Sounds like a journey that requires a lot of courage, a lot of honesty, and maybe a willingness to admit that we might be wrong about a few things.
I mean, that can be scary, for sure.
Definitely. But, as Tavamithram reminds us, it's a journey that has the potential to lead us back to our true selves, to that place of unity and wholeness that I think deep down we're all searching for. Okay, so let's say we're on board with this idea of oneness, this aham brahmasmi thing. How does that actually change the way we live our lives? Does it mean we just like quit our jobs, sell all our stuff, and meditate in a cave somewhere?
That's a common misconception, and Tavamithram, he addresses that head on. He's clear that realizing our true nature, it doesn't mean rejecting the world. It's not about denying that actions have consequences.
So it's not about checking out of life completely.
Not at all. It's more about how we approach our experiences. All of them. The good, the bad, the messy. It's about bringing more awareness, more compassion to everything we do, every interaction we have.
So instead of like getting totally swept away by all the drama, we're learning to just observe it a bit more, find some breathing room.
Exactly. Think about it this way. Imagine yourself caught in the waves, getting tossed around. Then imagine yourself watching those same waves from the shore.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
You're still experiencing the waves, right? But you're not at their mercy.
That's a great way to put it. And that ability to observe without getting totally lost in it, that's something we can cultivate through meditation, right?
Exactly. Meditation helps us develop that inner observer, the part of us that can simply witness our thoughts, our feelings, without judgment, without getting all tangled up.
Tavamithram also talks about bhakti, which is often
Ah.
translated as devotion, but he seems to have a very specific take on what that actually means.
He does. Tavamithram, he's challenging that traditional idea of bhakti as, blind worship, like bowing down to some external deity. He's arguing that true bhakti, it flows naturally from understanding aham brahmasmi.
So once you realize your own divine nature,
It's like you can't help but feel this love, this deep reverence for that same divinity in everything and everyone around you.
so less about rituals and more about embodying that reverence and compassion in our daily lives.
Spot on. It's about seeing every encounter, every moment as an opportunity to express that true nature, that oneness.
This has been really eye-opening. I have to admit, though, I'm still wrestling with something. If our true self is already whole, complete, then why do we still want things? Why do we get disappointed, frustrated, caught up in the ups and downs of life?
It's the paradox, isn't it? We get these glimpses of that ultimate unity, but we're still experiencing life as individuals. We still have desires, fears, ambitions.
So it's not about erasing those experiences, but more about, I don't know, changing how we relate to them.
Exactly. Maybe we can learn to approach those experiences, even the tough ones, with a little more curiosity, a bit more kindness towards ourselves.
And maybe even a little humor. Right.
Why not? We can ask ourselves, okay, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this?
It sounds like Vedanta, the way Tavamithram explains it. It's less about finding all the answers in some ancient text and more about a lifelong process of, well, self-discovery.
Beautifully put. It's about cultivating awareness of ourselves, of the world around us, recognizing how interconnected everything really is, and then just living from that place of greater compassion, wisdom, and love.
And maybe that journey starts with a single step. Maybe it starts with being willing to question our own assumptions, to look inward, and to consider just for a moment that maybe, just maybe, we've been living in a cave of our own making.
And who knows what we might find when we finally step out into the light.
That's a journey worth taking. We hope this deep dive into Vedanta with Tavamithram has given you some food for thought and inspired you to continue exploring these ideas. Thanks for listening.